Hello, everyone. A very logical day to all of you. So, those who are listening to this editorial explained for the first time, I'll tell them that we have divided this into three sections. One is the reading part. Second is the main idea, which we are going to derive from the reading itself. And of course, the vocabulary, which we'll be discussing along with the reading. But yes, in the end, also, we'll be discussing those difficult words, right? So, this is 20th May editorial explained and the Hiroshima moment. I think all of you must have read about the Hiroshima, but then what is new about it now? What is the moment? Now let us see. So, as he joins the G7 leaders in Hiroshima this week, Prime Minister Narendra Modi must try and recalibrate India's great power relations, reposition the country to deal with the unfolding structural changes in the world economy, and reassess its priorities in the multilateral arena. Recalibrate, फिर से measure करना, उसके relations को बनाना, reposition to give it a proper position again, and reassess, reevaluate. So RE as a prefix, you get to know, will be doing it again. That is one part, one meaning of the RE. So it's priorities in the multilateral arena. The Hiroshima summit is about uniting the advanced nations to confront the challenges presented by Russia and China and widening the G7 coalition to include key non-Western nations. Now, this is the objective, right? But this objective is of the Hiroshima summit. The G7 countries plan to intensify the sanctions regime against Russia, whose war against Ukraine continues. The US and Japan also want to bring their European partners fully on board in confronting the China challenge. While the Europeans see the dangers of Moscow's aggression against Ukraine, they are less vocal about the Chinese ambitions for Asian hegemony. Less vocal about it, that means they are not speaking much. The US and the Japan want to bring the European partners. ये देखो अब जैसे फर्स्ट पैराग्राफ में कहा कि the joins the G7 leaders, right? And the intention of the author is that what should Mr. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, should he try? What must he try? So he must try and calibrate, reposition, reassess its priorities. ठीक है, इंडिया के लिए क्या होगा बेटर अभी प्रायोरिटाइज करना उनके लिए जरूरी होगा क्यों? Then he is giving, let's see, this Hiroshima summit has come up with this objective. What does it plan to do? It plans to intensify, मतलब ज्यादा सिवियर कर लेना, increase कर लेना, the sanctions regime against Russia and whose war against Ukraine continues. That means the war between Russia and Ukraine is almost, I think so, 18 to 19 months. Okay? So it's a long one. And it still continues. So US and Japan also want to bring in the European partners fully on board in confronting the China challenge. So if the countries are against Russia, right, and there are many countries who should be against China also, according to the G7 when they come in with the European countries. Right now, the author says that Europeans see the dangers of Moscow's aggression against Ukraine. क्योंकि वो यूरोप में है पास पड़ेगा तो इम्पैक्ट भी ज्यादा होगा राइट सो दिस अग्रेशन is seen or the dangers of the aggression is seen or is acknowledged by the Europeans, but they are less vocal about the Chinese ambitions for Asian hegemony. Hegemony means it has to be in control. Right. So if China comes up as a controlling power, a very dominant power in Asia region, then the Europeans are not so against the idea, or not against the idea, but they're not more concerned about this idea, so they don't say anything much. They're not vocal. They don't come up with their own opinions there. This is what he's saying. So the Chinese ambitions for Asian hegemony. India has the opposite problem. What is the problem of India? While coping with the multidimensional threat from China has become Modi's principal preoccupation, He has tended to mince words on the Russian war in Ukraine and its implications for global order, especially the sovereignty and territorial integrity of nations. Right now, see, this is happening, whatever is this. It is the same way, the same position where India is there, not able to speak outright against Russia. Similarly, Europeans are there who are not able to speak or to be vocal about China's hegemony or China's inclinations, you can say, right? So the situation is same on both the sides. We'll read this. What the author says that India has the opposite problem. Coping with the multidimensional threat from China has become Modi's principal preoccupation. He has tended to mince word. Mince means to cut into very small pieces. So mince words means you're trying to um, come up with an escape there, not coming up directly with what is on your mind. Yeah. So mince words हो रहे on the Russian war in Ukraine and its implications for the global order. So what the Russian war is getting to, what its outcome or consequences will be on the global order, especially the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the nations. So here the author has given you the background of the problem as well as what the G7 leaders are planning to do. So this is the plan to intensify the sanctions, right? Then India has to recalibrate, reposition, reassess its priorities. This is what India has to do or must do, right? So you must try and do. G7 countries plan to intensify, so here comes the objective. Then this is what he is saying, that he is trying to mince words on the Russian war. What will be the effect of all this? So they plan to intensify the sanctions, but India is not saying something, whereas India must do this reposition, recalibrate, and reassess. Now, that the US needs India to balance China has given Delhi some room for maneuver on the Russian question. US needs India to balance China. मतलब US plus India चाहिए, right? India is there with Russia and against China also. US needs India to face China. So it needs India to balance China, has given Delhi some room for maneuver on the Russian question, but that room will continue to shrink as Moscow's war against Ukraine enters the 16th month. So मुझे 19th याद था, 16th month. So military dependence on Russia, which is locked in an unwinnable confrontation with the West and hopelessly tied to China. India's principal adversary. Adversary is the opponent, rival. Does not bode very well for Delhi. Boding well means it does not augur well. Foreboding होता है मतलब पहले से ही पता हो जाता है कि कुछ नेगेटिव होने वाला है, तो it is that omen, right? Or it is augur. So it doesn't augur good. Navigating paths out of difficult corners must be a high priority for the PM in his engagement with the G7 leaders. At the same time, Delhi must seize the new possibilities to accelerate its economic growth in partnership with the G7 countries. This is what Delhi must do. क्योंकि इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ चाहिए, इकोनॉमी पे ध्यान देना जरूरी है. So the US-China confrontation is no longer a narrow geopolitical one, but also a geo-economic, and that promises an overhaul of the world economic system. Because they have a relation not only geographically but also economic relation, so whatever happens between these countries is definitely going to change the economic order of the world economic system. So, as a member of the Quad with the US, Japan, and Australia, Delhi is already engaged in discussions about regional and global economic restructuring. This is what Delhi is already doing through the diversification of supply chains and greater technological cooperation among trusted friends and partners. So, this is what Delhi is doing when, as it is a member of the Quad, right? Here again, author has said what Delhi must do. It must seize the new possibilities. See now. US needs India to balance China. Fine. Right. But whatever is happening here between Russia and Ukraine, it does not bode very well for Delhi. सही नहीं है उसके लिए क्यों? Because India is not able to say much on that. At the same time, what Delhi must do, it must seize the new possibilities to accelerate its economic growth, right? And it is already engaged in discussions about regional and global economic restructuring, right? So US needs China, sorry, US needs India against China. What India should do, India must seize this opportunity to accelerate its economic growth, and the step ahead is that Delhi is already engaged in doing this along with the Quad group, right? So you can link these lines, these phrases together and come up with one sentence as the idea of this part of the paragraph. Advancing this agenda is critical for India's long-term economic prospects. Here. Finally, Delhi should also be. Now you can see that at least three times the author has said must be, must do, and here should also be. Should also be dear-eyed about the global multilateral architecture. India's current leadership of the G20 does give it an important role in bridging the divide between the West and the rest. Delhi, however, must temper its expectations. Temper मतलब उसे थोड़ा सा सही करना चाहिए. Its expectations about G20, which is driven by deep internal conflict and the amorphous global south. That means there are many conflicts, internal conflicts there. An amorphous global south, black in the 1970s and 1980s. Amorphous is having no shape. So this is full of, Riven is rife, full of deep internal conflict and the amorphous global south, black in the global south, sorry. Back in the 1970s and 1980s, India was tempted by the soaring ambitions of the leading, soaring is increasing, rapidly rising. Ambitions जैसे बिल्कुल आसमान छू रहे थे. Soaring ambitions of leading the third world, which blinded Delhi to the expansive opportunities for commercial cooperation between the north and the south. Right? It blinded Delhi means Delhi was unable to see. Why? Because it was ambitious in leading the third world. So it was unable to see the expansive opportunities for commercial cooperations between the north and the south that some of its Asian neighbors gained from. If Delhi lets its rhetoric on the global south get ahead of itself, India could once again miss a hinge moment in the global political economy. ठीक है, इसका मतलब नॉर्थ एंड साउथ के बीच में जब बिजनेस और इकोनॉमिक्स उन्हें द कमर्शियल कोऑपरेशन हैड टू बी established, but India missed that chance. Now India should come out of that rhetoric and should not miss again this moment. Hinge moment means it is a moment which will bring a turn or a change. Right? The change is brought. तो उसे हम hinge moment कहेंगे. ठीक है? In the global political economy. So coming up with the main point here, it is that it is critical for India's long-term economic prospects. Advancing this agenda, मतलब अगर हम इस agenda को आगे रखते हैं, आगे बढ़ाते हैं, तो what India or Delhi should also do is it gives an important role in bridging the divide between the West and the rest. So Delhi must again. It was blinded. Now, this is talked about the what it did earlier. It did not pay attention or it neglected. Now, what it has to do. If Delhi lets its rhetoric get ahead, then it can miss a hinge moment again. That means Delhi should be aware of this opportunity and aware and grab the opportunity. So it is like making hay while the sun shines. ठीक है, अब उन्हें करना है क्योंकि पिछली बार उनका अगर मिस हो गया था तो अभी तो उन्हें इसका पूरा बेनिफिट दे शुड टेक. So now, two paragraphs, they were actually the second and the third slide were a repetition, not a repetition, it were a continuation of the same paragraph. So here G7 summit provides an opportunity for India to seize, as I said, grab the opportunity, new economic possibilities, and reassess the priorities. So reassess is reevaluate. तो प्रायोरिटीज क्या है उन्हें वो समझना चाहिए, अपॉर्चुनिटीज क्या है उन्हें वो सीज करना चाहिए. दैट मीन्स दे शुड ग्रैब दोज अपॉर्चुनिटीज विल दे स्टिल हैव टाइम. So that is what I said, make hay while the sun shines. Or strike when the iron is hot. So this is the main idea, and let's come up with the words now. Aggression, you all know aggressive means to be very intense. ठीक है, इंटेंस इमोशंस होते हैं जब कभी झगड़े वाले होते हैं तो अग्रेसिव नेचर हो जाता है, वेरी शॉर्ट टेम्पर्ड सॉर्ट ऑफ. बट यस, अग्रेसिव वुड मीन एनीथिंग लाइक एनिमोसिटी और बेलिकोस, ये भी लिख सकते हो तुम वर्ड. Vocal is where you are to voicing your opinion, that you will be vocal. You'll be considered to be vocal जब आप कुछ बोलोगे. Hegemony is to be in a dominant position. Coping with, I took this word because most of you make an error of cope up with. ठीक है, जब हम बोलते हैं या जब हम कभी एरर फाइंडिंग करते हैं, so it is not cope up with, it is only always coping with. To mince words, that means to chew. Mince yani to chew or to break into small pieces, cut into pieces. So what will you do? How will you mince the words? आधा खा लेंगे आधा बोलेंगे, ये होता है mince words. Literally बोलने. Otherwise, mincing words would mean that you are not coming out with your proper opinion. Adversary is your opponent, your rival. It doesn't bode well, it is augurs well or foreboding, whatever you can say. Boding से foreboding याद आ जाता है. ठीक है, तो foreboding का मतलब होता है premonition. पहले से ही लगता है कि कुछ ना कुछ गड़बड़ होने वाली है. Right? That is called a premonition, or there's a word that is potent. P-O-R-T-E-N-D. Right? Or a presentiment, prescient. You know beforehand that something wrong is going to happen. So that is foreboding. So it doesn't bode well, it doesn't signal. Bode का मतलब आप signal के साथ भी कर लो. साइन होती है कि हाँ कुछ अच्छा होने वाला है या तो कुछ बुरा होने वाला है, उसे बोर्डिंग वेल कहते हैं. राइट, डियर राइट मतलब दे नीड टू सी दैट रिवन इज फुल ऑफ. राइफ से आप कर सकते हो इसको, यू कैन रिमेंबर इट विथ राइफ इज फुल ऑफ. amorphous is having no shape, shapeless. Soaring is rising very high, flying very high. सोरिंग प्राइजेस हो सकता है, exorbitant prices कहते हैं. तो राइजिंग और इंक्रीजिंग. Rhetoric is something that is repetitive, persuasive. राइट, repetition आप कर सकते हो. इस सेंटेंस में, इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, it is repetition that India should not repeat the earlier mistake in this way. Otherwise, it is a literary device. It can mean persuasion, urging, or it can also means to create impression. तो rhetoric का अलग meaning भी होता है. I'm giving you that. It is something that is just to create impression. तो impressive speech हो जाती है. Or it is used for repetition and persuasion. तो persuasive style हो सकता है. That is it. So this is a different meaning. Write it carefully. This meaning is not according to the context. Okay. So that's all for today. Thank you and have a very enjoyable weekend or a week ahead. So see you tomorrow. Thank you.